2 days ago, Donald Trump stood before the nation and declared Iran finished. No Navy, no Air Force, no radar. We totally obliterated them, he said. Then, on day 35 of this war, Iran's state television broadcast something that made the entire world stop. Wreckage of an American F-15E inside Iranian territory, a bounty announced for any civilian who could find the pilot, and a message aimed directly at Washington. We are not finished. Not even close. Iran's state television didn't just report it. They broadcast footage of the wreckage. They announced a bounty, 10 billion tamans, to any Iranian civilian who could locate the downed pilot and hand them over to military or law enforcement. They named the region. They told people exactly where to look. This was not a quiet military claim. This was Iran using the downing as a full-spectrum public victory, military propaganda, and psychological, all at once. There are two central questions this video addresses. First, how does an advanced U.S. aircraft go down in this conflict? And what does the evidence tell us about Iranian air defense capability? Second, where does this war go from here? Militarily, economically, and diplomatically. We'll work through both, sticking to confirmed reporting and flagging, clearly where uncertainty remains. We're going to walk through what Iran is claiming, what the confirmed facts show, what this means for the balance of this war, and why this single event, one downed jet, one missing crew member, has reshaped the information battlefield more than any missile strike in the past month. Stay with me. Here is the question at the center of everything. How does the most advanced military on Earth lose an aircraft inside a country whose air force the president declared completely destroyed just 48 hours earlier? That question is what this video answers. And the answer matters not just for this war, but for every assumption underpinning us military strategy in the region. Iran's IRGC stated it shot down a US F-15E Strike Eagle in the Luristan and Kogaluiye region of western Iran using its newly deployed advanced air defense system. They said the aircraft was completely destroyed on impact. They announced the pilot's fate was unknown and mobilized civilians to assist in the search. Iranian state media published footage of what they claimed was the wreckage. Now, Iran has made false claims throughout this war, multiple times. U.S. Central Command repeatedly stated all aircraft were accounted for when Iran announced earlier shootdowns. So why is this one different? Because this time, the U.S. itself confirmed it. The Pentagon notified Congress of the downing. The Associated Press confirmed it. Search and rescue helicopters were filmed over Iranian territory. The U.S. military was conducting a rescue operation, which you only do when there is actually someone to rescue. Now, Iran has made false claims throughout this war, multiple times. U.S. Central Command repeatedly stated all aircraft were accounted for when Iran announced earlier shootdowns. So why is this one different? Because this time, the U.S. itself confirmed it. The Pentagon notified Congress of the downing. The Associated Press confirmed it. Search and rescue helicopters were filmed over Iranian territory. The U.S. military was conducting a rescue operation, which you only do when there is actually someone to rescue. Iran is not just winning militarily in this moment. It is winning the information battle, and in a war where both sides are competing for global perception, that matters as much as any missile launch. Let's go back to April 1st, 2 days before this jet went down. Trump's national address, he said, and these are his exact words, "Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten." He described it as something nobody had ever seen before militarily. He said the core strategic objectives were nearing completion. He said they were going to finish the job very fast. 48 hours later, an F-15E is on the ground inside Iran. Iranian state television is broadcasting the wreckage. American search helicopters are flying over Iranian mountains. And Iran state television is offering a bounty to civilians to find an American pilot. Whatever nearing completion means, it does not look like this. The U.S. military has inflicted enormous damage on Iran. That is real and documented. Iranian missile launches dropped sharply in the first week. 3/4 of Iran's assessed launch capacity has been degraded. But degraded and gone are not the same word, and that difference just cost one crew member their aircraft and possibly their freedom. Iran understood this distinction. Washington's public statements did not reflect it. Iran's narrative going into this moment is simple. The most powerful military in the world said we were finished, and then we shot down their jet. That is a message that lands in every capital watching this war, from Moscow to Beijing to Riyadh. And it lands hardest in Tehran, where the regime needed exactly this kind of image. Here is what the IRGC said before this incident. In the weeks leading up to this downing, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps publicly announced a new air defense system, developed and deployed in the months since the 12-day war in June 2025. They said it was specifically designed to counter advanced stealth and non-stealth aircraft. They said they had been testing it. The announcement was public, it was on record, and it appears to have worked. Iran has spent decades building redundancy into everything. Its air defense was not a single integrated network that could be knocked out in a 12-hour strike campaign. It is distributed, layered, and partially mobile. When the US and Israel struck on February 28, they degraded a significant portion of that network. But Iran had already anticipated that, and had been developing systems intended to survive exactly that kind of opening assault. Iran's claim count 2 F-35s, 1 F-18, 2 F-16s, 4 F-15s. Most of those are disputed. U.S. Central Command has repeatedly denied losses. But now that one loss is confirmed, those earlier denials will receive renewed scrutiny. That is how information warfare works. One verified truth retroactively raises the plausibility of everything else claimed alongside it. Iran knows this. It is not accidental. The bottom line, Iran's air defense capability was degraded. It was not eliminated. And the gap between those two things is where an F-15E went down on day 35 of a war that was supposed to be almost over. Countries in Africa are running short on fuel. Ships are stranded at ports across the Indian Ocean. Pakistan and the Philippines announced shortened work weeks. The IMF warned that sustained energy price increases of this scale carry global inflation risk. The G7 met and could not agree on a joint reserve release. 7 U.S. allies pledged help with the strait and refused to say how. Iran did not need to win a single air battle to achieve all of this. It needed to exist and to resist. Set aside the contested aircraft numbers. Look at what is not contested. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil flows, is effectively closed. Brent crude is at $109 a barrel, up over 50% since the war began. Kuwait's Mina al-Ahmadi oil refinery is on fire. A desalination plant in Kuwait was struck. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, all absorbing Iranian strikes or strike debris. Iran's goal was never to defeat the U.S. Air Force. It was to make the cost of this war unbearable for everyone around it. Iran also reactivated Hezbollah. On March 2nd, Hezbollah entered the fight, launching missiles and drones into Israel, forcing an Israeli ground advance into southern Beirut, displacing nearly 1 million Lebanese civilians. A Hezbollah drone struck a Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, bringing the conflict to European soil. The Houthis are threatening to open a second front. Iran's proxy network, which the US and Israel sought to degrade, is still functioning. This is Iran's version of winning, not defeating the US military head-to-head, but making the entire region feel the weight of this war, and making Washington own every consequence of it in the press, in the markets, and in the silence of allies who won't say how they'll help. The most immediate story right now is the missing crew member. If Iran captures them, it is the first American prisoner of war in this conflict. That is not just a military event, it is a diplomatic earthquake. Iran would have leverage it has never had in this war. Prisoner negotiations, propaganda value. The image of an American in Iranian custody broadcast to the world. It changes every calculus on the table. Meanwhile, Iran struck Kuwait's oil refinery. It struck a desalination plant. Sirens sounded in Bahrain. Saudi Arabia destroyed incoming Iranian drones. The UAE shut down a gas field after missile interception debris started a fire. Iran fired on targets across the Mideast on the same day the jet went down. Not as a celebration, but as a signal, this is a sustained campaign, not a single event, and we are pacing ourselves deliberately. Iran's officials have said they are conserving what remains of their missile stockpile deliberately, pacing themselves. Their theory is straightforward. America has a political calendar. It has markets that react to casualty numbers. It has allies who are absorbing costs they didn't sign up for. Iran does not have an election cycle. It does not have a press corps asking daily about exit strategies. It has one objective: make the cost of staying higher than the cost of leaving. Whether that strategy succeeds is not yet determined. But the downed jet, the missing crew member, the bounty broadcast, the continued strikes on Gulf energy infrastructure, all of it on day 35 of a war that was supposed to be almost over, suggests Iran is executing that strategy with more effectiveness than Washington's public statements have acknowledged. A single downed aircraft does not change the military balance of this war. Iran is still significantly degraded. The U.S. still has overwhelming firepower in the region. But the downed jet changes something more important than the military balance. It changes the story, And in modern warfare, the story is a battlefield. Iran just won a round on that battlefield that no missile strike could have won for them. Every government in the world watching this war just updated its assessment, not of Iran's military capability, of its resilience, of its willingness to absorb enormous damage and keep fighting, of the gap between what powerful governments say in national addresses and what happens 48 hours later on the ground. That lesson is being absorbed in Moscow, Beijing, Pyongyang, and in every capital that has been watching this as a test case for what modern military power can and cannot do. For Iran domestically, this moment matters enormously. The regime lost its supreme leader. It has absorbed thousands of casualties. Its infrastructure has been hit across 29 of 31 provinces. It needed something it could show its people, proof that the resistance is real, that the enemy bleeds too, that the country is not helpless. A downed US F-15E, broadcast on national television, with a bounty and a rescue operation playing out in the mountains. That is that moment. 2 days ago, Trump said Iran was finished. Today, an American jet is on the ground inside Iran. A crew member is missing, and Iranian state television is running the story on loop. The war is not over. The narrative is not settled. And the next development, whatever happens in those mountains in western Iran tonight, will matter as much as any airstrike. If you want to follow this as it develops, subscribe and turn on notifications. The story that started 35 days ago is nowhere near its final chapter.